Alright, what's going on, boys and girls? As you can tell from the title of this video, Linux gaming sucks. Yay. Notice my excitement. When I read the description, it says the absolute worst platform or garbage platform or whatever this idiot says. Chad Jenkinson, more like you're a chode, just by your title. Your up-down ratio, I believe it was 44 to down to 8 up. So something tells me this is either just a troll video or this is going to be a video where I just want to bang my head against the wall because this is 30 years out of date crap that I'm used to hearing. I did look at Chode Boy's channel, Video Game Analyst. So if you're a video game industry analyst, you're about as good as Michael Patcher. So you're like a weatherman. You can be wrong and still be right. So let's roll into this video and see how much I want to not try to swear and have my ulcer pop out of my brain.
Linux is the best gaming platform to ever exist, and it's superior to Windows. I'm sorry, I can't even say that for 2 seconds with a straight face. In reality, Linux is the absolute worst platform to play games, period. It's worse than Macintosh, it's worse than Windows, it's worse than consoles. You're even better off playing games on a mobile phone. No, if you're a PC gamer and you play games on Linux, you're not part of no master race, you're just a straight up clown.
And in the first, I don't know, 35 seconds, the only clown I'm watching right now, or listening to in this case, is you. It's not about being a master race, you dumb shit. Anybody who argues PC Master Race is a fucking tool, you're a chode. If you argue blah 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 is better than blah, you're a chode. You're a fucking dick. You're a useless sack of feces. The bat guano that gets dropped in the deepest, darkest recesses of a cavern is more useful than anybody who argues that in that logic. Pros, cons on everything. You so far have shown that I don't even think you've done any of your research. Worse than Mac OS. Have you looked at Mac OS for gaming, you dumb shit? Tell me how Cider works. Tell me why it's twice the requirements on Windows. For a Windows game is twice the requirements it is on Mac OS. It's got an overhead called Cider, but apparently you're too stupid or too dumb or just fucking lazy and ignorant to actually look that up. Fucking.
And in this video, we're going to talk about why Linux is the worst gaming platform ever. I guess before we get into why Linux is a terrible platform for gaming, we need to talk about what Linux is in the first place, because I'm sure there are quite a number of subscribers to this channel who are not very familiar with Linux and what it actually is. So Linux is essentially an open source group of operating systems. So you think of Windows 10, right? That's a single operating system, while Linux is a group of different operating systems. So there are several of them, like Ubuntu, Debian, Mint, and many others. So being an open source project, anybody can contribute to it. Anyone can theoretically create their own distro for Linux and customize their entire experience. They could choose what to install, what not to install, compared to Windows, where Microsoft pretty much dictates what you have installed on your computer, and you have mandatory updates. You have all these things that you are forced to do on Windows, but with Linux, you are not forced to do anything. It's the experience is entirely in your hands and in your control, making it the most customizable and the most free platform ever. So if you're someone that's concerned about privacy, if you're concerned about getting your personal information stolen, maybe get a virus on your computer. It is incredibly difficult for you to get a virus if you're running Linux on your computer, especially if you have one of the more obscure OSs that are much more difficult to hack into because they are more complex and are also less used. So there's less of a incentive for hackers to learn that operating system and learn the holes in and vulnerabilities.
Okay, so first off, you mentioned Ubuntu, Debian, and Linux Mint. You do realize Mint and Ubuntu are based off Debian. They're different, but for the most part, they're the same too. So, second of all, if you're only going to name those three, at least name three that are completely different from one another. Here's an idea: Fedora, Ubuntu, Arch, Manjaro, Solus. I'm waiting for one of these guys who does these videos to actually not have their head shoved so far up their own ass that they think their opinion means everything and that it's always right, and come across with some intelligence in the argument as opposed to ignorance. Most people are probably going to expect me to yell and scream. I'm really, really trying not to. There's just going to be a lot of swearing. So, as far as the virus thing, malware. Let's rephrase this. Ask Linux Mint how that goes when their ISOs get hacked. The server that they're on gets hacked and replaced with ISOs that have malware on them. It happens. Linux malware is out there. If you are just going through and adding repositories ad nauseum and at random, it's no different than downloading an exe or a DMG from an unknown source and expecting not bad things to happen. That's what we call problem between keyboard and chair, or keyboard and floor, i.e. the user. Linux runs off repositories. Yes, there are .debs, and yes, there's DNF and a few Flatpaks and AppImage and snaps and RPM and yada yada. The myriad of other install options. So can we please at least get somebody to make this analysis not look like they have... I don't even think they have a brain. Like, there's no critical analysis in this, and I'm already like... I don't even know. This video is going to be way too long, and I'm going to cry all through this.
Vulnerabilities to try to hack into people. So, yeah, if your main objective when going online is to have the most free and secure web experience ever, and also if you're into programming, if you really like getting into your system and having that customization, having that control that you can't get on any other platform, Linux is for you. But if you consider yourself to be a gamer and take gaming seriously in any way, then you should avoid Linux like the plague, because it is the absolute worst platform out of all of them to play games on. And sure, over the years there have been plenty of improvements, but it's still nowhere near, not even on the same league as playing games on Windows, which is a much smoother and less frustrating gameplay experience. Well, why is that? Why is gaming on Linux such a pain in the ass? Well, the most, I guess, one...
Okay, Mr. Video Game and Industry Analyzer. The only thing you know how to analyze is your head up your ass, because the only thing you are... That first four letters of the analysis part, or analyst, you have your head shoved up your anal rectum. As far as the control portion, yeah, it's no different than on Android. That's why a lot of people that actually do use smartphones have a preference for Android, because they can customize it to have the best they can for them. That's why most people who aren't iOS users go to Android. Say what you want about it, whether or not it's Linux, all the other ad nauseum stuff that you can say about it. I know the reason I go to Android is between the two. At least I can make it operate how I want. Not so much with iOS. But as far as it's only meant for programming, are you a dumbass? Go use Kodi as an HTPC on it. The next time you build a mini ITX or micro ITX box and stick a graphics card in it, try running it as a console, you dipshit.
One of the more obvious things to look at is the fact that less people are on Linux. Same thing with Macintosh, right? Less people play games on Mac and Linux combined, much less than they do on Windows. So developers are going to dedicate most of their resources on the Windows version of their game, and they would try to make sure that the game works well on Linux, because the fact is that Linux accounts for such a small minority of people who own Steam or just play serious PC games in general. Linux has less than 2% of the market share. It's very minuscule. Not a lot.
Okay, as far as market share, please define what one you're going with. Are you going with, net stats? Are you going with market share? You can't judge based on the simple fact that the way Linux works. Hence the reason it's kind of an invalid argument. The Steam survey is inaccurate because it never prompts you, very infrequently. Linux is a small minority, quote unquote. Okay, if you have 150 million Steam accounts and that's 1%, okay, that's almost 1.5 million users. It's not a small number to scoff at. Just saying.
A lot of people use it, so developers have no real financial incentive to continue supporting it. But it's actually a lot more than just the amount of users that Linux has that turns developers away from it.
And no, it's not about just resources. It's not about sales. What developers should be doing is developing with cross-platform toolkits to start. I.e., look at Vulkan. Oh, well, I only know DirectX. Well, that's on you to sharpen your skills and learn and adapt to the skills of tomorrow today. Novel concept. So no, it's not a deficiency in just Linux. It is called a deficiency in developers and a deficiency in developer toolkits not supporting certain things. If you're going to analyze the industry, actually analyze the industry, because right now the only thing you're analyzing is how stupid you are.
It's just the overall complexity of it compared to developing on Windows. Developing games for Windows is so much easier and cost effective than to develop on Linux. So here's the thing, okay? And it really all comes down to three letters, which is API, the Application Programming Interface. And if you're not familiar with API, it's essentially what connects your software to your hardware, right? So think of your GPU as the heart, right? And you need blood to flow from your heart to the rest of your body. So your API essentially...
Please tell me you are not trying to... Application... I don't... Guess it's the interface. God, I'm not even gonna... Application Programming Interface. Wow. API. You, good sir, are a fucking idiot.
Acts as that bloodstream that goes to the rest of your body, and the rest of your body being the game that you're trying to play. So the API is essential in your system being able to read the GPU and to use that information to take advantage of the power of your GPU and have a good gameplay experience. So think of high resolutions,
You do realize API APIs are not just GPU bound, you stupid shit. It's how that's how the OS interprets the calls. It's what ring level do they go to. It's how does the CPU interpret it? It's not just the GPU, you dumb fucking moron.
Frame rates, all of that is possible because of your system's API. So the thing about Linux and Windows being different operating systems, they use different APIs. Windows mainly uses Direct3D, which is the standard API for all Windows programs, essentially.
And they don't call it Direct3D anymore. It's just simply called DirectX, which encompasses all the old school stuff, Direct3D, and all the audio stuff that goes with it. Can you at least get the terminology right? My God.
Essentially, like Direct3D is how all Windows programs more or less are developed. That is the standard across the entire Windows operating system. Developers, because Direct3D is that standard on Windows, and Windows being the biggest platform, developers program the game to make it primarily compatible with Direct3D first and foremost, as it is the most used API and, quite frankly, the easiest to program for.
The easiest to program for. That's a matter of opinion. It's the one that's taught the most, so it's the one that's going to have the most knowledge to it. Doesn't necessarily make it easier. That's just an opinion, not fact, you fucking twat.
Because on the Linux side of things, you have something called OpenGL, which is the API that's mainly used over there. That's how games are compatible on Linux or not. If the game uses OpenGL, you have a new thing called Vulkan, which is a new API that allows for better optimization, but it does require much more work, and it's much more complex to program for on the part of developers to make their game compatible. So developers are probably going to be...
Are you that fucking inept? I'm just okay. Vulkan gets I'm going to try to break this down really simple for you, because apparently you don't know Linux. So Vulkan is the whole point of Vulkan as an API is to get it too close to Metal performance without the overhead as possible. The problem with OpenGL is you have layers upon layers upon layers above it before you hit the Metal. Vulkan tries to go beneath that and get closer. Apparently you didn't do any research as far as Vulkan being tougher to program for. Is being done by developers. Ask the guys at Creo Team how that's working. The guys that develop Serious Sam, Talos Principle. Ask them how hard that is. The next time you run Doom 2016, try running that. FYI, that's Vulkan, you dipshit. I'm waiting for the day that people actually have a brain when they do these videos.
Even less likely to program games on Linux with the increased complexity that Vulkan has. It's like it's a catch-22, right? Vulkan allows for games to be more compatible and easier and better, like running better on Linux. But on the other hand, it's so much more complex and requires a lot more work.
It's not more complex. It doesn't require more work. It's new. But here's the thing. It's being developed by this weird thing. By developers. It's not a standard being pushed by one company. You have multiple companies pushing it. NVIDIA, Steam, Valve, I believe Epic. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But there are big companies that are coming together to push a standard. Whereas DirectX is one standard pushed by one company to one segment. And just like, bam, here, assembly line it. Only use this. That's a Microsoft thing. And if you are too stupid or ignorant to understand that, then you, my friend, should not be an analyst.
For developers to actually make it work, that you're going to actually have it less likely that you see continued Linux support. So yeah, OpenGL and Vulkan, either way, it's really hurting Linux's chance to have that mainstream support and to have games run well and run properly on Linux. So what ends up typically happening on Linux is that you may have some games, especially using the Source engine, because Valve has really been pushing for Linux support, and you do have other developers that have committed to support Linux, where games run completely fine. They run pretty flawlessly, comparable to that of Windows. In a lot of cases, you do see that happening, but in more cases than not, you see other instances where games run at a much lower frame rate.
I would also like to point out, unlike Microsoft, a game that is made on Linux can also run on Windows. A game that is developed with Vulkan can also run on Windows. Because Windows, it's available. The Vulkan's available. The people who develop it don't containerize it to a platform. So instead, here's the funny thing, that apparently you can't analyze the Linux gaming segment of the industry very well, so let me do it for you. There's this thing called Proton. There's this thing called DXVK. DXVK. 9, 10, 11, take your pick. It interprets DirectX calls and translates them to a compatible Vulkan call. That's on Linux. So native Windows games, I can sit here and play SAO Fatal Bullet on Linux through Proton because of DXVK. And guess what? I get the same performance with it that I get on Windows. So, can you actually learn to analyze stuff? Like, your critical analysis sucks.
And are just borderline unplayable in some cases, and other games just simply will not run. They won't even run in the first place, and you just can't play them. So if you are a serious gamer, right, you would want to have the largest game catalog that you could possibly have. Well, if you decide to use Linux, you are severely limiting your ability to play many games. There are certain game engines like Unreal 4 and Unity that just have such huge problems utilizing OpenGL or Vulkan or any of the APIs that Linux uses compared to Direct3D. So you do have...
You really are that stupid, aren't you? If you're gonna throw like Unreal or Unity in there, no, that's not a Linux problem. That is just port it and it will go. That's a developer problem. They don't expect it just to work on macOS. They actually test it. So why the fuck are you gonna do the same thing with the Linux? That's a developer problem, you dumb shit. And by the way, those actually have Linux builds, you shit stain. I mean the engines. Unity and Unreal 4. I'm trying, guys. So, with that being said, the performance thing is a thing. Especially on earlier titles. Look at The Witcher 2 when it first came out with Virtual Programming's Eon Tech. It's the same thing. They had some problems. It's been sorted out. It works fine. As far as certain games not working, you're probably gonna Fortnite, PUBG. You do realize those don't work because of easy anti-cheat. You fucking shithead. The only thing that's being cheated right now is my time, because there's no point in arguing half this crap because homie's got the head buried in the sand. Can you just put your body in there and do the world a favor and, I don't know, stop breathing so you stop taking up someone else's oxygen? Holy fuck.
Have a lot of compatibility problems, and even if you do manage to get those games to run, chances are that those games are going to run at much lower frame rate. Your performance is going to be severely limited compared to if you had the Windows version running. And if you really do consider yourself to be a serious gamer that spends hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars on GPUs, CPUs, and just upgrading your computer, then Linux doesn't really pay off, because you're essentially voluntarily bottlenecking your gaming rig by utilizing an inferior gaming platform that has less compatibility and is much harder to program for, making less games available to you. And even if the games do run, like I said, they're most likely going to have some type of compatibility issues. And sure, you do have several games that do work perfectly and work flawlessly, and in those cases it's great, but more likely than not, you are going to run into some serious problems if you expect to have the same gaming experience on Linux as you would on Windows. So it doesn't really pay off to have to run Linux while you have over $1,000 gaming build, because your chances are you're not even going to be able to utilize the full power of that rig. And sure, maybe if you're a Bitcoin miner and you need powerful gaming rig, and if you're into other stuff that are not necessarily gaming related, then that may not necessarily apply to you. But if you are serious about playing games first and foremost, while the other things may come second, then gaming on Linux doesn't really make any sense.
Gaming on Linux doesn't make any sense. What determines a serious gamer? Is it the platform? A PC? Are you a serious PC gamer? I'll remember that when I'm running my Vega 64 on a Ryzen system that's running Linux and telling me that's not a good system. Fucking Christ. Seriously. Can I get some knowledgeable arguments with this? Like, the amount of dumb in this is, oh God. You're not gimping anything. Go watch a DOS Geek video. Go ask him. Go ask him how many frames a second he was getting on certain games when he was running a Vega 7. Radeon 7. Radeon 7 Vega 64 build that he had, even on a 1080. You are spouting off ignorance as knowledge. People like you are 100% the problem. Why? People don't understand computing, because you pass off ignorance as knowledge. If you analyze an industry, have some knowledge in it, because the only knowledge that I'm seeing is just words thrown around that you think you understand what they mean. API, Direct3D, DirectX. Homie, do you know they haven't called it Direct3D in like over a decade? There's a reason it's called DirectX. There's a reason it's called DirectX 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. It's just a group. It's a total API. You idiot. Now see, if you had made the argument say, oh, well, Linux's subsystem architecture has problems. Okay, I'd give you that one. But see, you're not even making those arguments. You're just making fallacy arguments, straw man arguments, and throwing in terms that you think mean something to average consumers. And here's the thing. Go watch somebody who's new to Linux, but is knowledgeable in Linux. Go watch Zero Maru. He's a guy that switched to Linux and doesn't have his head shoved up his ass like you do. Though, I will ask you, with your head shoved up your ass, did you put some windows in your butt cheeks? Because I'm seeing some squares there. Little red, blue, and, multicolored.
If you play games very casually and you just, you just want to play a couple games here and there, but you're not really interested in gaming on a computer, then Linux is fine. I'm not here to argue that the entire Linux platform is terrible and that in all cases Windows is better than Linux.
Homie, watch your intro much? Are you? I'm not here to argue that the entire experience is worse than Windows. Yet, you just, in the first 35 seconds of your fucking video, you trashed on it, saying it was the worst experience ever. Do I really have to finish watching this?
I am coming at this from the perspective of someone who plays video games and bought a gaming computer for the purpose of playing video games. So if you have a gaming rig, if you have all that, do not play on Linux. You will regret it significantly. It's an objectively inferior gaming experience, and it's a shame because Linux, the entire premise of Linux is to have that greater freedom and have more options and more customization. And that you think, like, in a perfect world, that would work really great with PC gaming, because that's really what the heart of PC gaming has always been. You can upgrade your machine, you have different options and where to buy games from, no paid online. You just have so much more options playing games on PC than you would on a console. And it's a shame that that freedom that Linux offers doesn't translate well into PC gaming, because with PC games, you can't even utilize that freedom, and you can't even take advantage of it because compatibility is such a huge problem on Linux, and the gameplay experience is overall inferior on Linux. So yeah, if you're a gamer, if you play computer games, Windows is really the only realistic way to go. Avoid Linux, avoid Macintosh, avoid any other OS, because Windows is the way to go.
I'm hoping that's the end. God, please let that be the end. Please. I'll believe in you if there is. Windows is not the way to go, you dumb shit. Use what you want to use. If you want to use Windows, use Windows. If you want to game on a Mac, game on a Mac. If you want to game on Linux, game on Linux. Here's the funny thing. You can do that on all of them. The term PC just happens to mean personal computing. You're deciding your personal computing experience as it relates to gaming by the choice of your software and your OS. And who are you to define that and say that person's experience or that person's experience is inferior if they are content with it? You are a hack, and I don't mean that in a good way. You're not an industry analyst. The only anal that you know is from having your head shoved up there and pulling it in and out every time you have a thought, trying to find your brain. So, what I'm going to tell you, dude, is if you're going to analyze an industry, you might want to know it. Know the segment you're looking to analyze. It's not Direct 3D, it's DirectX. If you're going to criticize Vulkan and say, oh, well, it's harder to program for, know that it's cross-platform, you dipshit. Know that it's meant to go from here where OpenGL is to closer to Metal, you idiot. Learn to analyze an industry. There's a difference between giving opinions. You can have all your opinions you want. You can say Windows is a better platform. I don't care. Once you start spouting the ignorance as intelligence is when I care. And I think, honestly, do you just ooze? I make a lot of fun jokes about people being stupid as shit. I've seen a lot of dumb shit. I've heard a lot of dumb shit. But this is just me asking you. I've made fun of people having 10 assholes on their fingers and shit appearing on their screen after they get done typing. I've asked people if they have 2 assholes because, they have one attached to their face and one attached to their ass. I'm just never sure which one's moving. In your case, you have so many because shit just pours out of your pores. It's that level of dumb that you are. So, TLDR, analyze an industry, I don't care. At least actually know the industry if you're going to analyze it. Because this shitty ass video shows that you don't know what you're trying to analyze.